Guys, welcome to a classic movie review of 1982's sword and sorcery classic Conan the Barbarian, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, James Earl Jones, and Max von Sydow. Now, this was directed by John Milius and based on the pulp stories of Robert E. Howard. This is not only a film that's an epic and violent exploration of a barbarian hero's journey, but also one of the best bits of casting in movie history by giving a 7-time Mr. Olympia winning athlete a sword. Now, Conan the Barbarian was not that well acclaimed upon its initial release, but of course it's since earned a cult following and solidified its place as a definitive entry in the sword and sorcery genre. Let's take a look.
Conan, what is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women. That is good.
So the story of Conan the Barbarian is set in the mythical Hyborian Age, what I think is a period between the fall of Atlantis and the rise of recorded history. And we follow Conan, this young boy whose village is destroyed by a warlord named Thulsa Doom, and as usual, great James Earl Jones. Now, after witnessing the slaughter of his parents and the enslavement of his people, Conan grows into a savage warrior driven by a quest for vengeance. Now, the film story is pretty straightforward. Conan is wronged, he's enslaved, and he goes on a journey of vengeance, picking up some sidekicks along the way, and ultimately to his confrontation with Thulsa Doom. Now, even when I watched this movie as a younger viewer, I always loved the film's setting. This mixture of ancient ruins, barren deserts, towering mountains, and ruined temples. It was a bit like Star Wars in the sense that it felt real, but also alien and fantastical at the same time. Now, of course, a huge part of why the film works, and certainly why I loved it so much as a kid, was Arnold Schwarzenegger's literal towering performance as the titular hero. Arnie, of course, was relatively unknown in Hollywood at that time. His breakthrough role in The Terminator would come just a few years later. His physicality and presence made him a perfect fit for the role of Conan, standing at 6'2" and having that massive physique. Now, Schwarzenegger's portrayal of the barbarian is one clearly of brute strength. He obviously looks like he could swing a sword and take your head off, but he has a screen presence that also carries this air of steely determination. And that's not to say that it's strictly one-note stuff. I mean, he's not giving Daniel Day-Lewis a run for his money, but even as early as this, it can still exhibit a quite surprising range from quiet moments up to pure rage. And also, Daniel Day-Lewis never had 22-inch biceps, so... And there's no better moment to shout out one of my favourite sequences in 80s cinema when young scrawny Conan is enslaved and must push the wheel of pain. This full body workout soon sculpting the lad into a perfectly proportioned physical powerhouse. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a good 7 years away from peak competitive shape here, which was arguably in the 1974 Mr. Olympia contest. He'd retire a year later but make a controversial comeback in 1980 when he was training for this role of Conan and thought, as you do, I'll just enter the competition for a challenge, and then he won the thing. So we also have James Earl Jones as the big bad guy, Thulsa Doom, in another standout performance. The actor, known of course for his deep, resonant voice, which later gained further fame as Darth Vader. He brings that otherworldly, chilling menace to the role of a serpent-worshipping sorcerer and warlord. He brilliantly surfs the line between charismatic and terrifying. With his philosophical musings about power and destiny, it's a good contrast with Conan's skull-crushing, skull-cracking brute force.
People have no grasp of what they do.
You killed my mother. You killed my father. You killed my people. You took my father's sword. Ha!
Elsewhere in the cast, we get Sandahl Bergman as Valeria, Conan's love interest and kick-ass warrior in her own right. Bergman was no stranger to the genre, appearing in Xanadu, She and Red Sonja. And additionally, we get surfing legend Gerry Lopez as thief Subotai, adding a light-hearted yet loyal companion aspect to Conan's journey, contributing some comic relief to the otherwise dark and foreboding story. And plus, the director had worked with him on his previous film, the coming-of-age surfing movie Big Wednesday. And speaking of the director at this point, John Milius was best known for his script work on Apocalypse Now and Red Dawn. This material's a good fit for his signature style of macho bravado, and here he creates a great atmosphere and some powerful imagery. Like I mentioned, he builds a world that's both pure fantasy and grounded in a tactile reality. Quickly, I forgot to mention the legendary Max von Sydow in what is an extended cameo, really, but his sheer presence here helps set the tone of stark realism within this fantasy world. Sydow, of course, bringing the kind of gravitas he brought to so many Ingmar Bergman movies during his career. Now, there is a chance that audiences today may find the pacing of the film slightly slow at times. There's an intentional lull I felt in the middle act, the movie using the quieter moments to allow the action sequences even more impact. Now, when the action does arrive, though, it's well choreographed and again, grounded in a sense of physicality. It's not overly stylized or have that bounciness of some of today's CGI stuff battle scenes. Now, like many a movie of its ilk, the musical score by Basil Polidoris here is one of the standout elements of the film. You can't beat these sweeping operatic soundtracks. Polidoris' score has become as iconic as the film itself. It's got a great mixture of orchestra and pounding drums, which help give the movie that mythic feeling. So I touched on the fact that back in 1982, Conan the Barbarian was met with mixed reviews. However, as history has shown, the film went on to become a cult classic thanks in large part to its stunning visual design, but of course also to Arnold Schwarzenegger's star-making performance and the colossal career that he was about to embark upon. So I grew up with movies like Conan the Barbarian, and so I do have a soft spot for it, and even for its slightly ropey sequel, Conan the Destroyer. But of course, this first film would have a lasting impact on the sword and sorcery genre, influencing subsequent films like The Beastmaster in '82, Krull in '83, and of course Red Sonja in 1985, and even Willow in 1988. All films that bring back a wave of video shop nostalgia for me. I feel like the genre fell out of favour for probably a couple of decades before Peter Jackson took on the Herculean task of adapting the Lord of the Rings saga. Now, this was an era in film too when this genre wasn't afraid to have beheadings, limbs flying off, and a bit of nudity as well. I feel like these days things would have been kept a little more PG, although in fairness, the 2011 remake with Jason Momoa didn't skimp on some of these things, but struggled mostly just for not having Arnold Schwarzenegger on screen. Now, of course, Arnie had signed on to multiple sequels for the movie, and we did get the sequel Conan the Destroyer, and the character did appear in Red Sonja, but we got sequels teased for decades. The fact that the rights to the Conan property are held by several different entities, not helping the case. Anyway, what we are left with is this fantasy classic that's endured not only because of its star-making leading man, but because of its convincing world building, unflinching action, and its simple story of revenge, fate, and freedom. It's pure popcorn entertainment, yes, but also a definitive and pretty timeless entry in the fantasy genre. Go check it out.